Welcome to True Crime Documentary. Today we take you to the peaceful community of Sedona, Arizona, often associated with healing and tranquility. The town was left reeling when the body of a 19-year-old was discovered under shocking and bizarre circumstances. This is the story of a teenage groom, a 65-year-old Bridezilla, and a marriage that ended in murder. Noah Beasley was a 19-year-old with a shy and quiet personality, born and raised in the small town of Cottonwood, Arizona. Noah had just graduated from high school in May 2021, where he was known as the shy kid who always carried a guitar on his back while many of his classmates were preparing for college or starting jobs. Noah was still trying to figure out what he wanted to do with his life. He had a passion for music and dreamed of becoming a musician one day, but he hadn't yet decided how to make that dream come true. Noah lived with his mother, Jenna Beasley, in a modest trailer on the outskirts of Jenna Beasley town. Their financial situation was tough. Jenna was a single mother who had struggled to make ends meet for most of Noah's life, especially after losing her job due to the economic downturn caused by the pandemic. The stress of their financial difficulties weighed heavily on Noah. He often felt responsible for helping his mother, who was deeply in debt. Despite his quiet nature, Noah had a kind heart. He was the type of person who would go out of his way to help others. When he was struggling himself in the days leading up to his death, Noah was in a strange situation. Just Noah Harford, a week earlier, he had married Gertrude. J.Y. Harford, a 65-year-old retired Harris J.Y., was known for her extravagant lifestyle and had been married several times before she insisted on a grand wedding, which took place at a luxury resort in nearby Sedona. The wedding was over the top with expensive decorations, a gourmet menu, and a designer wedding dress that J.Y. had specially made her groom Noah, however, seemed out of place at the event. He appeared nervous and unsure about the whole situation. The sudden announcement of his marriage to 65-year-old Jera Hartford came as a shock to everyone who knew him. Many wondered what could have led the gentle, introverted Noah to make such a drastic decision. Some speculated it was connected to his mother's financial struggles, while others feared he was being manipulated. Noah's relationship with J.Y. wasn't just unusual because of their age difference. J.Y. was a demanding and controlling person. She often threw tantrums when things didn't go of her way, and Noah found himself increasingly overwhelmed by her behavior. He confided in his mother about his doubts and fears, but Jenna encouraged him to stay in the marriage. As a result, Noah felt trapped, torn between his mother's wishes and his growing discomfort with his new life at the time of his death. Noah was still trying to navigate his new reality. He had withdrawn from his friends and spent most of his time in his new home with J.Y. His dream of becoming a musician seemed further away than ever. He was a young man who had lost his way, unable to see a future that made sense to him. On the morning of October 8, 2021, the discovery town of Sedona was shaken by a grim discovery at 8:30 a.m. Marjorie Lane, an 82-year-old neighbor, was out for her daily walk when she noticed something unusual at the luxurious home of Cherry Hartford Beasley. The curtains were drawn and the front door was slightly ajar. Marjorie, who had lived in the neighborhood for over 30 years, found this odd, especially since Judd was known for her strict routine and usually had everything in perfect order. Curious and concerned, Marjorie decided to check on the house as she approached. She called out, but there was no answer. Hesitant, she stepped inside and immediately noticed a strong, bitter smell. It was then that she saw Noah Beasley lying motionless on the living room floor. His body was slumped against the couch, and scattered around him were several empty pill bottles, all prescription medications. A half-empty glass of water sat on the coffee table beside him. Marjorie was frozen in shock. Her heart racked. She had known Noah and couldn't believe what she was seeing. Fighting back tears, she quickly pulled out her phone and dialed 911. Her hands trembling as she gave the operator the address and explained what she had found, when the 911 operator asked her to check for signs of life. Marjorie hesitated, but did as she was told. She knelt beside Noah and gently shook his shoulder. Calling his name, there was no response. She could see that his face was pale, his lips slightly blue, and his breathing had stopped. Marjorie's mind was racing. She recalled the wedding just a week before, where Noah had looked so out of place, standing beside the much older Gertrude in her extravagant wedding gown. She couldn't understand how things had gone so wrong so quickly, with tears streaming down her face. She stayed on the phone with the 911 operator until the police and paramedics arrived. The authorities quickly declared Noah dead at the scene. Marjorie, shaken and devastated, was escorted outside, where she sat on the curb, staring blankly at the house where Noah's young life had tragically ended. The investigation police arrived at the Hartford Beasley residence just before 9 a.m. on October 8, 2021. Leading the investigation was Detective Marla Grundle, a seasoned investigator with the Sedona Police Department, known for her sharp instincts and no-nonsense attitude. Detective Grundle wasted no time in assessing the scene, accompanied by Officer Tom Jenkins, a young but eager recruit. They entered the home that had now become the center of a tragic mystery. The living room where Noah's body was found was eerily quiet. The luxurious furniture and tasteful decor contrasted starkly with the lifeless figure on the floor. Detective Grunwald immediately noticed the empty pill bottles scattered around Noah and the glass of water on the coffee table. She took note of the labels, prescriptions for medications like Sanks and OxyContin drugs, often associated with overdose cases. The scene itself was surprisingly clean. No signs of struggle, no overturned furniture, no blood. It was almost too clean, which raised red flags for Detective Grunwald. The neatness suggested that whatever had happened, it wasn't the result of a sudden chaotic event, but something more calculated. Detective Grunwald directed Officer Jenkins to begin photographing the scene, while she called in a forensics team to dust for fingerprints and gather evidence. The coroner, Dr. Evelyn On, arrived shortly after to examine the body. She confirmed that Noah had likely died from an overdose, but the amount of drugs present, far beyond the recommended limit, made it clear that this was no accident. As they continued their investigation, Detective Grunwald's eyes were drawn to a small detail: a wedding photo of Noah and Gertrude on the mantel. In the photo, Noah's expression was distant, his eyes downcast, a stark contrast to Gertrude's beaming smile. It was a SLE, but telling sign that all was not well in this new Leard household. The forensics team carefully collected the pill bottles, the glass of water, and any other potential evidence. They also noted a faint smell of perfume in the air, a scent Detective Grunwald recognized as something Gertrude was known for, a signature fragrance from an upscale brand, Channel No. 5. By the time they finished, Detective Grunwald had a growing sense that this was more than just an overdose. The evidence pointed to foul play, and the investigation was only just beginning. As the investigation into Noah Beasley's death deepened, the police turned their attention to the most obvious suspect, Gertrude J.Y. Hart for Beasley. Noah's 65-year-old wife, J.Y., was a well-known figure in Sedona, infamous for her extravagant lifestyle and commanding personality. Born into wealth, Jerry had been married multiple times, each union ending in a bitter divorce. J.Y. was obsessed with staying youthful and was legendary for her tantrums when things didn't go her way. Her reputation as a bridezilla was well earned, as she demanded nothing but perfection from everyone around her. When Detective Mara Grunwald and Officer Tom Jenkins arrived at J.Y.'s home later that afternoon, they found her lounging by the pool just a few feet from where her husband died, sipping on a Moser and flipping through the latest issue of Vogue. Despite the tragic circumstances, JY seemed unnervingly calm. Dressed in a designer captain and oversized sunglasses, she exuded an air of indifference that immediately caught Detective Grunwald's attention. JT greeted the officers with a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes when asked about the events leading up to Noah's death. She explained that she had gone to bed early the night before, leaving Noah in the living room to play his, quote, computer games. She claimed that when she woke up that morning and didn't see him in bed, she assumed he had slept on the couch. She expressed surprise and some sadness upon hearing of his death, but didn't seem particularly distraught, as if she had heard a friend's fat had passed away during the interrogation. Jai's story remained consistent, but her lack of emotion raised suspicions. She was cooperative but distant, and answering questions with rehearsed precision when asked about the pill bottles found at the scene. JY stated that Noah had been struggling recently and had been prescribed medication to help him cope. She insisted that she had no idea he might overdose, and suggested that perhaps Noah had taken more pills than he should have in a moment of despair. Despite her calm demeanor, Detective Gumal noted a few inconsistencies in Jai's story. For one, JY had mentioned that Noah was playing video games, but the TV was off when Marjorie Lani discovered the body. Additionally, the bed in the master bedroom was untouched, suggesting that JY may not have gone to bed at all. The more Detective Grunwald pressed, the more it became clear that JY was hiding something. However, without concrete evidence, the police couldn't hold her. Deary's alibi seemed airtight, but her behavior left a lingering sense of doubt. As the interrogation concluded, Detective Grunwald couldn't shake the feeling that this glamorous, poised woman was more involved in Noah's death, and she let on with the second suspect, Gertrude Hartford Beasley, remaining a person of interest. The police turned their attention to the second suspect, Jenna Beasley. Noah's mother, Jenna, 49, was a woman who had faced more than her share of hardships. Her life had been a series of bad decisions, each one seemingly worse than the last. Struggling with crushing debt, Jenna had resorted to selling prescription drugs under the table, a secret she had managed to keep hidden from most, but not all, having been arrested several times. Detective Mara grumbled, knew that Jenna's desperation might have driven her to push Noah into his ill-fated marriage with Gertrude. After all, the union offered Jenna a lifeline out of her financial woes. The idea that her son's marriage could secure her future was too tempting to resist. But what cost? When the police brought Jenna in for questioning, she appeared frazzled and nervous, dressed in faded jeans and a worn T-shirt. She was a stark contrast to the polished image of Gertrude. Jenna's hands shook as she lit a cigarette, habit she had picked up again in recent months, and her voice wavered as she answered the detective's questions. Jenna admitted that she had encouraged Noah to marry Durr, painting it as an opportunity he couldn't pass up. She spoke of the wedding held at a lavish Sedona resort, where Noah had seemed out of place amidst the opulence. Jenna claimed she had wanted the best for her son, that she believed Gertrude could provide him and her with money, something she had never been able to provide. However, when the conversation shifted to the drugs found at the scene, Jenna became defensive. She denied knowing anything about the massive amount of kills, insisting that Noah must have taken them himself and gotten it from someplace else. But Detective Grunwald wasn't convinced. Jenna's financial struggles, her involvement in illegal drug sales, and her desperation to secure her future all pointed to her involvement under pressure. Jenna's responses became more erratic. She began to contradict herself at one point, claiming she hadn't seen Noah in days, then later stating she had visited him the night before his death. Her nervousness and inconsistent statements only deepened the police's suspicions despite her denials. Jenna's connection to the drugs and her clear motive to ensure Noah's marriage work made her a prime suspect. Detective Grundahl knew Jenna was cunning, ruthless, and would do anything to protect herself, even at the expense of her own son. As the interrogation ended, they were closer to unraveling the truth, But more pieces of the puzzle were still missing, with both Gertrude Hartford Beasley and Jenna Beasley under scrutiny. The police turned their attention to a third suspect, Harry Hartford, the third suspect. Gertrude's ex-husband at 70 years old, Harry was a wealthy real estate mogul with a reputation for being ruthless in both business and his personal life. His most recent venture involved developing retirement communities across Arizona, a lucrative business that had only expanded his empire. Harry's relationship with Gertrude had ended in a bitter divorce just a few months before she married Noah, but the divorce had been a public spectacle gossiped about in Arizona's highest social circles. Kuru had walked away with a sizable portion of Harry's wealth, leaving him angry and humiliated. The timing of Noah's marriage to Gertrude, a much younger boy, Toy, had added insult of injury. Harry's jealousy and lingering resentment made him a prime suspect in the investigation. Detective Marlo Grunwald and Officer Tom Jenkins decided to bring Harry in for questioning when they arrived at his sprawling estate. They found him in his home office surrounded by legal documents and architectural blueprints. Harry greeted them with a firm handshake, his demeanor confident and controlled. Unlike Jenna, who had been nervous and agitated, Harry was calm and collected, almost as if he had been expecting their visit during the interrogation. Harry was cooperative, but his answers were carefully measured. He admitted that he was angry about Gertrude's new marriage, describing it as a slap in my bleeping face. However, he denied any involvement in Noah's death. Harry explained that he had been busy with his business and had little contact with Gertrude or Noah since the divorce. When asked about his whereabouts on the night of Noah's death, Harry provided a solid alibi. He claimed he had been at a business dinner in Phoenix, meeting with potential investors. Several high-profile attendees could vouch for his presence, making it difficult for the police to challenge his alibi. Despite his cooperation, Detective Grundle couldn't shake the feeling that Harry was hiding something. His calmness seemed almost too practiced, as if he had rehearsed his responses. The fact that he had been seen arguing with Gertrude just days before Noah's death only added to the suspicion. Witnesses had reported a heated exchange between the two at a local country club, where Harry had reportedly told Gertrude she would regret their divorce. While the police didn't have enough evidence to arrest Harry, his possible motive, jealousy and revenge, kept him firmly in their sights. The investigation was far from over, and Detective Grumbled knew they had to dig deeper to uncover the truth. On October 15th, 2021, just as the investigation seemed to be stalling, a critical piece of new evidence emerged. It was a cool, sunny afternoon with clouds beginning to form over Sedona. Detective Marlo Grundle was at the station reviewing the case files once again when Officer Tom Jenkins rushed in holding a sealed envelope. It had been delivered anonymously to the station that morning. Raising immediate suspicion, inside the envelope was a USB drive. The contents of the drive were shocking. A series of text messages between Jude Hartford Beasley and an unknown contact dated just days before Noah's death. The messages detail the plan Jude had been hatching to divorce Noah and cut him out of her will, using her knowledge of Jenna Beasley's illegal drug dealings as legal leverage. The messages were laced with Gertrude's frustration over Noah's sullen attitude and lackluster sexual performance as her husband, and her growing impatience to rid herself of him. Sex with him is so vanilla. The new evidence, one message read, "His bleep is smaller than my ring finger." Another chilling text stated, "If that bleep, Jenna thinks she's getting away with this bleep, she's got another thing coming. I'll make sure she and that small bleat pay." The messages provided crucial insight into Gertrude's mindset and her intentions. It became clear that she had been orchestrating a plan to eliminate both Noah and Jenna from her life. But the messages also hinted at the involvement of a third party, someone who was helping Gertrude gather information on Jenna's prescription drug dealing. Detective Grunwald and her team immediately began tracing the origins of the messages. They discovered that the anonymous contact was in fact one of Gertrude's private investigators, someone she had hired to dig up dirt on Jenna in the days before she married Noah. This investigator had uncovered Jenna's drug-dealing record and was feeding Gertrude the information she needed to execute her plan. The new evidence painted a damning picture of Gertrude as a manipulative and vengeful woman willing to go to any lengths to get what she wanted. It also raised serious questions about Jenna's role in Noah's death. Had Jenna learned of Gertrude's plan and acted out of desperation, or was she merely a pawn in Gertrude's twisted game? With this fresh evidence in hand, the police intensified their focus on both Gertrude and Jenna. The investigation took on a new urgency as it became clear that the truth was far more complex than anyone had initially suspected. The pieces were starting to fall into place, but the full story had yet to be revealed. Hey, true crime case solvers interested in more real life, The Twist Murder Mysteries, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. And do you have any thoughts about this case, or have a case of your own you'd like us to investigate? Leave us a comment. Stay safe. True Crime Case Solvers. On October 20th, 2021, as the investigation neared its breaking point, Detective Mara Gumbold received a breakthrough after analyzing the text messages found on the USB drive and cross-referencing them with phone records. It became clear that Jenna Beasley Nova's own mother was behind the deadly plot. Jenna had been using her son as a sexual pawn, driven by desperation and greed. The police now had enough evidence to arrest her. Jenna Beasley, 49, was a woman who saw life as a constant struggle, crushed by debt and haunted by poor life choices. Jenna saw Noah's marriage to Gertrude as her ticket out of financial ruin. She was terrified that Noah, who was not known to be sexually interested in women, would leave Gertrude, shattering Jenna's hopes for a steady supply of cash to ensure that wouldn't happen. Jenna had been secretly feeding Noah prescription drugs and sexual enhancers to keep him compliant and performing sexually. But her plan went terribly wrong when Noah accidentally overdosed, taking far more than she had intended. The twist came when it was revealed that Gertrude, unsatisfied with Noah's lack of sexual enthusiasm as a husband, had been planning to divorce him and cut both him and Jenna out of her life. She had discovered Jenna's drug dealings and intended to use that information to keep them out of her money, but Jenna, desperate to keep the marriage intact, took matters into her own hands. On the night of Noah's death, Jenna had given him a stronger dose of the drugs working to calm him down, but Noah, distraught over his loveless marriage and fearful of Gertrude's viciousness, took even more pills on his own, leading to a fatal overdose. Jenna hadn't meant to kill her son, but her actions directly caused his death. When the police confronted Jenna with the evidence, she initially denied everything. Her demeanor was panicked and frantic, a stark contrast to her earlier calm. But as Detective Grunwald laid out the damning messages and phone records, Jenna's defenses crumbled. Jenna claimed she never intended to kill her son, only to keep him in the marriage until they could secure their financial future. Jenna's arrest sent shockwaves through the small towns of Sedona, and Kay Wood, Noah's family, was devastated by the revelation that his own mother had caused his death. The community, already shaken by the bizarre circumstances of the marriage, was now grappling with the tragic reality that greed and desperation had led to such a senseless loss. As Jenna was led away in handcuffs, she appeared numb, unable to fully grasp the gravity of her actions. The Beasley family, overwhelmed by grief, expressed their sorrow and disbelief, struggling to come to terms with what had happened. The arrest marked the end of a dark chapter in Cedar's history, but the pain and shock would linger for a long time. Jenna Beasley's trial began in early December 2022. The courtroom was packed with reporters from outlets like the Arizona Republic and True Crime, weekly eager to cover the shocking details of the case. The prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney Mark Christensen, 42, painted Jenna as a manipulative and desperate woman who had placed her own financial needs above the life of her son. Christensen, known for his sharp intellect and relentless pursuit of justice, argued that Jenna's actions were premeditated and driven by greed. He pointed to the text messages, phone records, and Jenna's own confession as irrefutable evidence of her guilt. The defense, headed by public defender Carita Vasquez, 28, countered by portraying Jenna as a troubled mother who had made a terrible mistake. Vasquez, a seasoned attorney with a reputation for compassion, argued that Jenna never intended to kill Noah. She emphasized Jenna's financial struggles, her desperation to secure a better future for her family, and the fact that Noah's death was accidental. Vasquez appealed to the jury's sympathy, asking them to consider Jenna's difficult circumstances and the pressure she was under throughout the trial. Noah's family watched in agony. His mother's actions had torn their family apart, and the pain was evident in their tearful expressions. The prosecution's case was strong, but the defense's argue for leniency struck a chord with some jurors on December 15, 2022. The jury delivered their verdict. Jenna Beasley was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter. The jury believed that while Jenna's actions had caused Noah's death, there was not enough evidence to prove that she had intended to kill him. The courtroom was silent as the verdict was read, with Jenna showing little reaction, her face pale, unexpressionless. The judge sentenced Jenna to 10 years in prison with the possibility of parole. After 5 years, the sentence was met with mixed reactions. Some felt it was too lenient, given the tragic loss of Noah's life, while others believed it was fair, considering Jenna's desperate circumstances for Noah's family. The verdict brought little comfort. They were left to grapple with the reality that their loved one was gone, taken by the very person who was supposed to protect him. The town of Sedona, too, was left to process the disturbing events that had unfolded in their midst, a stark reminder of how greed and desperation can lead to unthinkable actions. In the months following Jenna Beasley's sentencing, the impact of the case continued to resonate deeply within the Sedona community. The trial had left a lasting mark on everyone involved, from the Beasley family to local residents. Jenna Beasley was sent to the Arizona State Prison Complex in Perryville, a high-security facility located near Phoenix in prison. Jenna faced a challenging environment. Her case had received significant media attention, and she was often the subject of gossip and judgment from fellow inmates. The prison system offered her limited opportunities for rehabilitation and support, leaving her to reflect on the tragic consequences of her actions. Jenna spent her time participating in prison programs aimed at addressing substance abuse and mental health issues, hoping to find some sense of redemption and prepare for her eventual release. Despite the turmoil, life in Sedona gradually returned to normal. The town held a memorial for Noah at a local park, attended by friends, family, and residents who wished to honor his memory. The event featured live music and speeches celebrating Noah's life and dreams. It was a somber reminder of the young man whose life was cut short, and it offered the community a chance to come together and support one another. As for the media coverage of the case, eventually faded, making way for new stories and developments. However, the impact of Noah's death and the subsequent trial continued to serve as a poignant reminder of the consequences of desperation and greed, affecting everyone who had been touched by the tragic events of October 2021.